If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. That's a quote by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and I think it's extremely relevant to my presentation today. Throughout history, humankind has shared an innate trait, the desire to explore. It's by that innate trait that pushed Christopher Columbus to discover the New World, and for us to land on the moon, and climb to the top of Everest and explore the deepest, darkest parts of the seas. Today I'm going to discuss the government's decrease of the NASA budget and why it should be increased. I'm going to talk about how NASA influences our education and the contribution to technology they offer, and ultimately how increasing the NASA budget will create a positive economic impact on our nation. In the 1950s, we were in Cold War with the Soviet Union. And in 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the first man-made object to orbit the Earth. And Sputnik meant fellow traveler, so it was completely peaceful. The problem is, it was launched an intercontinental ballistic missile. And the United States lost its minds. So NASA was founded on the fear factor of Sputnik. And we sent people to the moon, and people thought maybe in 20 years we'd be on Mars, and even further. But once we realized that the Soviet Union couldn't make it to the moon because of their economic slide, we stopped going to the moon. And the original NASA budget of 20% in 1969 slid to 3% today. We've made goals to try and increase the way we spend money through NASA by creating the space shuttle, but it was ultimate failure. And the problem with the space shuttle was that it was a transport system. It was never meant to go into deep space. So all this money was dumped into a transport system that was just going to low Earth orbit. And that's not exploring, that's not pushing the boundaries of space exploration, that's doing the same thing over and over. We went to the moon, and now we're in low Earth orbit for the last 30 years. The space shuttle was supposed to save us money, and it didn't. It did the opposite. Maintenance costs skyrocketed. And then after the last disaster, they canned the mission completely. And here we are without a manned space program. Then the national debt happened, and now we're paying Russia and SpaceX to launch our equipment and our astronauts into space. NASA's budget is roughly 4/10 of 1 penny on a tax dollar. Now, to give you kind of an idea of what that is, you remember the bank bailouts a few years ago. That was $850 billion bank bailout. That sum of money was greater than the entire running budget of NASA over the last 50 years. So people think we don't have money to go to space anymore, but it's not that we don't have money. It's that the spending of our money has become warped and mismanaged, and politicians don't care anymore. They're fighting for the next election cycle and fighting for the next Cold War report. And they've stopped looking to tomorrow. People don't understand how NASA's impact could possibly affect our economy. I mean, how could spending billions of dollars on sending spacecraft to space and bringing nothing viable back? It makes sense, but what people don't understand is the economic growth that is instilled in people wanting to become engineers and mathematicians and technologists. And it's these people that enable the future to come. In the 1960s, kids looked and revered these men. And they looked to become astronauts and mathematicians and technologists. And they had something to look forward to, and they provided to our economy. And the basis for our economy was on that technological growth. And now we're not offering any of that growth anymore. The entire space race of the 1960s, 1970s galvanized our entire nation and had kids wanting to become astronauts and mathematicians and engineers. Most kids don't have that dream today. Everyone wanted to do it. Most of our parents can remember watching Neil Armstrong step onto the moon And it probably gave them chills, I can imagine. My father told me he was brought downstairs at roughly midnight, Colorado time. And he remembers watching Neil Armstrong step on the moon. And thinking, one day, that could be me. One day it could be Mars. The space program brought upon a cultural mindset that does not exist today. We need to bring that cultural mindset back. NASA has provided knowledge on space exploration. They've done testing and research. We're growing plants in space. The next step could have been Mars. Now, the contribution to technology itself from NASA is confounding. It's unbelievable how much I was surprised at how much they contributed to our technology. To list a few: LED lights, artificial limbs, ear thermometers, heart pumps, NII systems, radial tires, solar energy. The list goes on and on and on. Our advancements in scientific research can be directly contributed from NASA from the 1960s to the 1990s. And the technological growth is what pushed our country to greatness during the Cold War. The federal budget spent on NASA is roughly $17 billion, down from $65 billion it was during the Cold War. NASA is not a priority anymore. Russia is laughing at us as they launch our astronauts to space. NASA directly influences our economy. NASA influences our education and technology. And without it, we are taking away the very thing that gives people something to dream about tomorrow. The NASA budget must be increased, and our future depends upon it. Thank you.